If not, all right, I can take it. You don't have all. Everybody's got it. Rules. Okay. Yeah, we got it. If he's not here, I'll make you speak on it. That's it, rule 6.
Yeah, I remember when we came out. We don't have JR and we're both in. I don't know what I'm doing. People say, you know what I'm doing. Yeah, get out there and do that.
That's like all.
No, I have not. Come on, you do right here, John. Huh? Good.
All right, good morning, everyone. It's 9 a.m. and out of respect for everybody's time, we'll get started with today's agenda. This is our regular Scott County Fiscal Court business meeting. Today is April 14th. It's 9 a.m. and I'd like to call this meeting to order. Appreciate your attendance and would like to ask you to join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Let us pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Ms. Hamilton, will you call the roll?
Mr. Hostetler?
Present.
Mr. Jones?
Here.
Mr. Wallace?
Here.
Mr. Corman?
Present.
Mr. Ellison?
Here.
Mr. Pratt?
Here.
Mr. Livingston? Mr. Culbertson?
Here.
Judge Covington?
Present. Thank you, Ms. Hamilton. Next item of business is approval of the minutes from our prior meeting. Questions, comments related to those as presented? motion from Mr. Hostetler, a second from Mr. Corman. Any other questions or comments? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Next are the transfers as presented in your packet. Any questions or comments?
Motion for approval.
Motion for Mr. Wallace, a second for Mr. Corman. Any other questions or comments? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Let the record reflect Mr. Livingston is present. But that's okay. Better late than never. You got a note? Well, according to board policy, you're out of parent notes. Oh, number 6, bills and hand checks. Jail general, $100,000. Any other questions there related to those as presented? And just for notice, yesterday we received a request for a hand check from the jail, and we're going to put that in new business, and we'll discuss that and give you the details on that. But on the ones that have been presented, are there any questions? Motion from Mr. Hostetler, second from Mr. Livingston. Any other questions or comments? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Let the record reflect that clerk's fees in the amount of $235,600.69 were submitted on 4/10. Let the record reflect that sheriff's fees in the amount of $42,992.48 were submitted on 4/6. That brings us now to number 9, and we have Casey Smith here, and Austin is also with us from our local office. Casey, we'll turn it over to you. We're glad to see you and appreciate the collaboration that you all always bring to the table. JR appreciates it too.
How's it going, JR? Thank you, Judge, and good morning, members of the court. Casey Smith with the Kentucky Transportation Cabinet District 7 office, and of course I am here with Austin Shields, who's the section supervisor carrying the maintenance and construction activities for the Scott and Woodford County areas. And today, our business today here is to talk about the rural secondary program. And before I get too deep into it, I just wanted to check to make sure that everyone has a copy of this form in their packet.
We'd sent that out previously.
Good. Okay. So the rural secondary program is run similarly to how it has been in previous years, and it's a 22.2% allocation of the motor fuel tax that is dedicated towards the use of the rural secondary roads throughout our state. On the second sheet, you'll see a map, and those are the roadways that are highlighted in yellow. On the map, you'll notice that there's several circles on here. We got a blue, orange, red, green, and the blue circles, what they indicate are the roadways that we were able to take care of the maintenance needs of within the past 12 fiscal years. Normally, we like to try to address resurfacing issues within roadways within a 12-year resurfacing cycle. So it gives you an idea or a visualization of how much we were able to cover within those past 12 years. You'll notice that there are some roadways that are yellow on here that have not been circles. It just means that we just haven't really touched on them recently, at least from a resurfacing perspective. Now, we do have a couple red circles, which is a little bit unusual, and that is because these were the approved rural secondary routes that are approved for fiscal year 23. They are currently in the April letting. We tried let it back in January, and it was withdrawn. So we are going to try again, and hopefully we will get that one awarded. It's in this month's, this month's letting. So
the hope is we'll let those, and once the asphalt plant gets up, those will be
Complete this year.
completed this year.
Yes.
November, most likely November completion date on those. There's plenty of time to do it, so.
Be pushed out that far.
Yeah, usually contracts,
Yeah.
6 months. So.
It is what it is.
Yeah, exactly.
But if we could get those done before winter, that would be very helpful, because I can tell you right now, Lemons Mill Road, and I've been on Stone Lane as well, but Lemons Mill is highly traveled, and any help and love it can get with additional pavement and little shouldering. I know it's minimal. It's not that, but Lemons Mill. And whenever 75, there's an issue on 75, Lemons Mill becomes like the alternate expressway, and it becomes almost dangerous with the truck traffic that goes on there. It's the sheriff's department sitting back there. They can speak to it better than I can.
It's dangerous with cars.
Yeah, but that's good news that we'll get pavement and some little help on the shoulders.
Yeah.
I'll let you continue. I'm sorry.
When I was mentioning that about it being withdrawn, that was from the January letting. So we are trying again, for April, and we do expect to be spending that money from fiscal year 23 on those two roadways. Going up to the top, you'll see that in Scott County we have about 84.463 miles of rural secondary roadways in Scott County, and below that you'll have the fiscal year numbers. And back when we published this document, the fiscal year percentage, or the flex percentage, and the flex funds and RS projects funding, those were just estimates at that time. They were projections, and I believe late last week the official numbers have been released from rural municipal aid, and we have noticed that there has been a steady increase throughout the counties. Now, the actual numbers that were received, just keep in mind.
Casey, there's a question.
Well, no, we don't have, I didn't get this. Did you get it? Nope, none of us down here has this. So we don't know what we're looking at.
I think it was sent in March. I can try to find it.
It was sent.
Okay.
I know Dwayne, whether they did it in South
Well, here, pass that down.
No, I got it.
Pass that down.
Okay,
I got it.
No.
It was sent out in March.
Yeah.
yeah.
You're talking about this form right here?
Yeah.
I got extra copies of it, actually. We could, sorry, Austin, I probably should have.
Now, these printed copies don't come out of the road fund, right? We don't have to pay for these.
County road fund, no, that's
Because if they
totally
do, you
separate.
can have it back.
That's a separate program. Yeah.
I've got a copy and I've gone over it, and thank you.
Now, as I was saying, the numbers that you're going to be seeing on there are the estimates, the official numbers that were just released not too long ago, and I'll go over those numbers as well. And we have, going down the list for fiscal year 2024, you'll notice a 10%. That is the flex percentage of the rural secondary program. And that amount has increased, actually. Now we are looking at 20% for the flex funds, which has essentially doubled the amount of flex funds available, and that goes up to $200,458. Now the balance of RS projects...
Can I stop you?
Uh-huh.
So JR and I discussed, and JR and I's recommendation when it was $98,000 would be to the court to give those flex funds back and continue on Long Lick as recommended. Mm-hmm. If it goes up to 200 and some thousand, do you all have additional recommendation there? And then the other thing I want to mention to the court is that we have a pending TAP grant, and that we have discussed using flex funds towards that TAP for improvements on Lyle Road for safety.
Correct. Yep.
So let's play what ifs. The hope is that the TAP grant will know something possibly in the next couple months. If we are awarded that TAP grant, could we hold those additional flex funds until we know which way that TAP grant goes?
That's one thing that I'll mention to Craig Cottle, who manages these numbers. Since we have seen an increase with the flex funds, any balance left over beyond what would be awarded for Long Lick Pike extension would be transferred over to the next fiscal year as flex funds. That's something that we'll just have to be clear with Craig to make sure that whatever is left over goes forward.
Okay.
So,
I just wanted to mention that and put that back on the table for everybody.
Correct. It won't be used until next year. Correct. Mm-hmm.
Right.
Which we probably won't even need that money until next year anyway.
Well, that would be the hope.
So yeah, right.
Ifs and buts were candies
Exactly.
Exactly. So we'll see.
But yeah, it's just like with the general RS funds, any balance that is left over does carry forward to the next fiscal year. So the new total for RS and flex funds you'll see is 902 on this 902,000 on this sheet is currently looking at 1.285 million. Now just keep in mind that there is an approved RS project, however it has not been awarded yet. So a portion of that overrun, the overrun came out to $749,000. Portion of that overrun will be used for the fiscal year 23 RS project. So just keep that in mind, not get too excited that all of a sudden we have a ton of money. It's because, you know, we still have some money that is yet to be obligated. So as we were saying, with the fiscal year 23, those were the approved RS projects from last year. Lemons Mill, Stone Lane, and 2 sections of Stone Lane are going to be addressed, and that is on the this month's letting. So hopefully we'll get that awarded and moving on, but we do expect to have that completed this year. And that leads us down to the Orange Diamond projects, which is the fiscal year 24 recommended RS projects. There are 3 recommendations that Austin has here to address on fiscal year 2024, and one is a section of Kentucky 620 Double Culvert Road from Luke Road going out to Davis Turkey Foot Road, and then a section of Kentucky 32 Josephine Road for about 3.1 miles coming from Caney Church Road out to Porter Road, as well as another section of Kentucky 32 over on the Long Lake Pike side, going from East Honaker Road out to to about Locust Fork. So those would be the recommendations for use of the general RS funds. Those are the funds that have to be used onto a state rural secondary roadway. Now with the flex funds, the recommendation that we have for fiscal year 24 is continuing that section of Long Lake Pike for an additional 0.873 miles. So what we are asking for from the court is 2 motions. One is the approval of the Orange Diamond projects, approval of the Orange Diamond projects for the general RS funding. And then the second motion is whether or not the county wishes to apply the flex funds on the green recommended project, which is a section of Long Lake Pike, Kentucky 32.
Questions, comments? Most of these roads,
So orange
What did-
diamond and, what's the other diamond?
The green diamond.
Yeah, green for flex.
You're getting ready to talk about some of the best people in this county.
well, I thought you would make some comment, Rick. I think Rick's been up there taking y'all to lunch or something.
We thought you'd be pleased.
But you've been on those roads, Rick, and JR has, and I have, and those roads, past Loop there.
And I'm liking seeing even on Long Lake, some more of these improvements. We all
Yeah.
know the case of that road.
Yeah.
Also, back to your other question about how does that play for if we do something on Lyle Road, if we get the grant?
So the question I posed,
Well, how does that play in what we're going to be?
so those additional funds, this has been, this green diamond has been determined and recommended for that 98,679, that flex funds. The remainder, we can come back and once we find out about the TAP grant, then could we take action on that?
It wouldn't be in this fiscal year. We would be
It'd be
talking about
next
that
fi-
for next year.
For next fiscal year. So we've got
Correct.
time
Yeah,
on that.
There's time. There is time.
Does it make sense?
Yes, yes.
But we just don't want to leave that out of the
No,
conversation.
right, no.
And I think that's what you're doing.
Right.
Um,
So what we do today, and then we find out different, we find out we get the grant, then next year we make adjustments.
Yes.
Yeah, and the balance of the flex funds that is not used this year does carry forward onto the next year. So those funds would be ready for use on Lyle Road. And Lyle Road just so happens to be a rural secondary roadway, which allows us to use those funds on that road.
Gotcha.
No, it'll actually be, it'll be 300,000 is what, for next year. Yeah.
So that's good.
Yeah.
I mean, that is a healthy amount that could offset some costs on that TAP grant. And we have options to help offset our match and that was the goal. Comments, any other questions or comments related, and would there be a motion to approve the recommended rural secondary projects of Double Culvert, Josephine, and Long Lick as presented?
That's what JR is.
Yeah,
I'll make a
Motion, second. Any other questions or comments?
Judge, does this take care of, didn't you say we needed 2 motions? Or?
Yeah, this is just taking care of the first one.
Yeah, just for the orange one.
Any other questions or comments? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Then would there be a motion for recommended rural secondary projects flex funds totaling in $98,679 to be used on Long Lick Pike as recommended? So we have a motion and a second. Second from Mr. Jones. Any other questions or comments? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Very good. Now, Chad Wallace, do you have any questions for our colleagues?
Sure he does.
Okay, I'm gonna fire through them. Okay, Midway Road.
Just one at a time.
All right, Midway Road, where are we at with the striping and the signs? Because that's the state road that we,
We so gladly traded.
Natalia's still evaluating that, so I don't know what they've done. I think that did get put on the district-wide striping, so that should come around sometime this year.
okay.
So that's, when the contractor gets there on that, they have all year basically to complete that. So.
All right, rest of the Lyle Road, where they were doing the sewer lines and cutting through.
Yes, Baker Kelly's brother, what's his name? Drawing blank. Robert Baker.
yeah.
Robert Baker was working with them on that. They wanted to use CNR asphalt again.
Yeah.
And I told them they mill it, but they're not an approved contractor. So I've not heard back. Once I sent that was a week ago. So I think they're looking for an approved contractor. I gave them Mark Reed's number.
Who makes that decision?
To pay that. It was done through permits. So if it's not up to, if it's as rough as it is, it's up to permits say yes, you have to fix this to.
But that road's going to have to be milled and then paved by approved contractor, because the condition is terrible and substandard, and I know you all, it's not your project, but to get it back to the standard of a state project, you're going to use a state contractor, and that condition out there, I mean, we've talked about it. Woo! I mean, anywhere else, there'd be people screaming.
Yes.
Could have been.
Do you have any timeline on that?
This was a week or two ago, so I haven't heard anything since.
Okay. If you would, when you hear something about that, would you hit us with an email? I'll share it with the court. What else, Mr. Wallace?
All right, third thing, down on Stamping Ground Road, where the S-curve is, kind of by Gaines Road. I know there was looking at using some safety money to.
There's an HSIP project that was let last month. It was overbid by a lot, so it was rejected. It's not in this month's letting, so I don't know if they went back and are reevaluating everything. But that's the latest.
But that project wasn't just for that curve. It was several spots.
Correct. It was 2 or 3 curve super elevation corrections.
Would-
Those curves actually realigning them a little bit.
Yeah.
Would there be any opportunity? Well, you all find out what's going on and about the cost, but that curve is just. I mean, even if if you could carve out the improvements on the curve, and I know that mobilization and all that stuff takes issue, but that curve is terrible and it's lingered and anything you all could do to help push it along, the court would appreciate it.
Last one, 460 to the east, and you're widening in Bourbon County. Can you give us updates on where we're at with all that?
Yeah, I guess that's probably more of an update for me. So we are looking at trying to get the rest of the funds into the next highway plan. We are working on the 2024 highway plan, and we are looking at trying to get the rest of the phases out so that we would actually have those funds available within the next biennium. Hope would be that we would get within everything all the way through construction for the 2026 biennium. So Now, there is a lot of right-of-way, of course, that has to be cleared with that project, so there's a lot of variance on that timeframe.
And is the adopted plan to choke it down when you get into Newtown?
Correct, yes.
Okay,
We
so not-
looked
not
at,
bypassing?
well, I mean, we looked at that too. We went up to the north, went up to the south, didn't look good either way. We thought, it's going to be best. We'll just kind of choke it down a little bit, put it right through Newtown. Now, another thing that we were also talking about is doing a roundabout over there at, what's the name of that road?
Newtown Pike and
Newtown
460.
Pike and 460, yeah. So hopefully, having that roundabout in that location would actually slow down traffic too as they approach Newtown. So
I think that's a great idea.
I'm pleased to hear that. Yeah, yeah. We're starting to see more and more throughout the state. For trucks, trailers, particularly, yes.
That's all I have.
That's all you have? Any other questions? Now, we do have a resolution.
I didn't bring that, but yeah, that does show the
It's
project on there.
Resolution 2309 that we're going to do for the road aid agreement.
Oh, okay. Well, that's for shift actually,
That-
which he has. Yeah.
Well, it's down here listed.
No. This is part of the rural
Okay.
secondary program, right?
That is for the next highway plan. That's for shift. That's not an action item here.
That's not an
Forward.
action item.
No.
But we do have a resolution about the road aid agreement.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's separate from what we're talking
Yeah.
about here too. Is
Yeah.
RS. So.
But the construction, the hope is the construction on 460 probably won't start till, are you saying now 26? Because what had been shared was 25.
Yeah, like I said, there's going to be a lot of variability with that date. So,
But-
if we do let it in 25, it probably won't be until 26 before we actually see groundbreaking. So,
Yeah.
so setting expectations.
Well, but please know as well that both Senator Thayer, Representative Pratt, they have made that their number one priority on the shift projects, and that helps us. And then knowing that funds have been allocated and are being, the construction on the Bourbon County side, you feel pretty confident that the funds will be found to get that completed. It's just going through the process is what it is.
So I tell you one other question for Casey. So 2 years ago, 25 North was repaved, I believe, up there to the interstate exchange as you go to Sayville.
All the way to Grant County.
Yeah, went all the Grant County. Then last year, you all went from Payne's Depot all the way to Fat Cats across. You redid all of Georgetown, downtown Georgetown. So, is there a potential to be doing repaving from 460 West? Because we have these curbs on there, and there's developing a crack, and there's pulling away, and I didn't know if that was in the potential to be repaved all the way to Franklin County.
Yeah, something like that goes through our resurfacing program. That's another set of funds. Do you recall seeing that?
That's way down.
That's way down.
The
Okay.
only thing that's really, 227 is gonna be paid in conjunction with this HSIP job. We're gonna have the south side of the bypass from 25 to 460. And there are 275 jobs left here this last month, so that's basically what's coming up this summer for State.
Okay. I got a guy, one of my constituents, J.R. Williamson. I'm going to let him talk to you.
All right. Thank you all. Oh, Rob, go ahead.
Is this who we asked about the bridge on Wood Lake also?
Sure. I mean,
Was
absolutely.
it?
The bridge on Wood Lake Road, the metal where the road ties into the bridge is coming up, and it's making an awful noise. The resident that lives there close.
So when you go over that transition,
The Harvard is right there.
Yes.
I'll talk to our bridge engineer.
Yeah, he hears it every time somebody crosses the bridge. So.
this guy named D.T. Wells has also complained about that.
But,
Don't worry about that.
Yeah, don't worry about it.
but here is a kudos. They had the same issue happen last year at Great Crossings, and they did get it fixed.
Yeah.
So it's a lot better
Yeah.
at the Great Crossings.
If y'all could look, put that on a list of
Yeah,
things.
there's a ton of locations where we have that issue. Yeah,
Yeah.
where they hit the metal. Yeah.
All right. Well, we will, if there's no other questions, and we'll move on, and then we do have that other resolution later in the agenda. Thank you all.
All right, thank you.
Moving on down, we have Mike Woolham here with Strand and Associates for Stormwater MS4 update. And Mike is here as our consultant on this. And Mike, thank you for being here.
Thank you, Judge Covington. Appreciate it. Members of the court, thank you for having me here today. I'm here to talk about the MS4 stormwater program, and I know there's some new members on the court, and just so you know kind of what that entails, MS4 stands for Municipal Separate Storm Sewer System, and this particular program has been around for, I guess, probably close to almost 30 years throughout the country. Starting out with some of the larger cities, it sort of then was applied to smaller cities like Georgetown, and then as Georgetown has grown and the county has sort of attached to the city, the county became involved in the program. I guess it's been about 5 years ago, and so as a part of that process, there's certain obligations that the county has as far as its designated urbanized area and some of the things it has to do to, I guess, oversee its municipal operations, because the county does have a fairly robust road department and other types of facilities around the county that it uses where it stores materials and whatnot. And so every year, kind of the timing is my presence here today is that there's an annual report that's actually due on April the 15th. I think it's extended to April 18th this year because 15th is on a Saturday. And so we're wrapping up that report to submit that. Scott County is actually a co-permittee with the city of Georgetown, so it's a joint response, joint effort in many respects through similar partnerships that the city county has in other areas. And this particular stormwater program requirement, they basically dictate certain obligations under 6 different areas. And I'm just going to give you sort of a kind of an overview of what we've been doing and what you've been doing as a county body and in collaboration with the city on these different required areas. These are called minimum control measures, MCMs. It's the way it's kind of the acronym. And MCM1, for example, is public education and outreach. And so you do partner with the Transportation Cabinet on some of this. The Transportation Cabinet helps educate and inform, so you get some benefit by the folks that were here today where they are doing things to support your all's initiative in this regard. Your program also touches like the elementary school population. For example, some of the funds that the county authorizes includes education components. I think there were actually 2,900 elementary school students that were, or at least where they had different touch points on education and training as it relates to stormwater in the environment over the past year. The Festival of the Horse is a big opportunity where there's interaction with the public, that the city and the county has a booth. They basically answer questions and try to provide informational material regarding the do's and don'ts when it comes to storm sewers and storm sewer drains and runoff and things of that nature. And then your solid waste voucher program, that was a really successful event, and I think there were a number that reported data on. I think there were over 220 tons of debris that was actually, I guess, over that 6-month period that were actually tracked and monitored at the transfer station just by virtue of that voucher program, which I think is still ongoing. So that was a very successful part of that effort. And so we report on those things in this annual report response that we submit. The second MCM is public involvement and participation, and this is sort of it's a kind of a different spin on the education side of things. And here, the city and the county, they partner with Toyota on Super Recycling Day. That's for haz waste and e-waste. And this past year, I think that event collected over 84,000 pounds of waste material in those 2 different categories. The Main Street Clean Sweep program is another initiative that that was sponsored by this body and the city in that regard. And then there were also Earth Day events, and then a waste tire program that Jared oversees on your all's behalf as well, where you get funds to support that to help keep the county clean in those areas. MCM3 is the illicit discharge detection and elimination program, and that program is actually, your EMA department is very much involved with that. There's actually an IDDE response plan, so there's a plan that sort of governs if there's spills or things like that, where there's response plans and approaches that are taken to help mitigate those in a very organized fashion, and you have a very successful group that handles those kinds of issues. And I think this past year there was only one really documented response that required that kind of attention that we actually reported on in our annual document. We also do outfall inspections and outfall mapping, and so this past year, one of the things that we did, Triport is an industrial area that's actually in the county, and so part of what our obligation was on your behalf was to go out and actually locate outfall sources for all the different industrial properties there, because those are to be monitored just in the event that illicit discharges are detected. You have to look at those on an annual basis to verify that there are no adverse conditions that may be present, that may need attention. And so we actually responded with that effort this past year. And then under that program, there's also an effort to track citizen complaints and responses, and that's something that is there's actually website portals that allow citizens to actually call and contact if they have questions or concerns about the stormwater program or spills or things like that may be detrimental to the environment and the natural waterways. The fourth MCM is construction site runoff and control, and this is basically new development and redevelopment oversight. And your planning and zoning department has a very robust responsibility and basically overseeing that. Sediment is can be a real detriment to our waterways, and so just this past year, for example, as part of their effort, I think that they have 2 tiers of land disturbance permits that they issue. For Tier 1, which is sort of your small, like building sites and things of that nature, small sized developments, there were 159 permits issued countywide. Tier 2, which are your larger subdivisions and large commercial areas, there were 14. I think the county had 1 in that category. And then your code enforcement and your planning and zoning inspection staff, they actually conducted, I think, almost 1,700 site visits throughout the course of the year to monitor activities on those sites to make sure they were doing all the right things when it comes to protecting the environment with things like silt fence and sediment basins, and making sure those stayed cleaned out and operational as they are intended. And just to give you
Mike, can I ask, do you have any breakdown of those 1,700, how many were in the city and how many were outside the incorporated?
I don't have that here with me today, Judge, but I can probably get that for you. I know it's large. The majority of it is the city, in the city, but it just depends on,
I just be interesting to know that number.
Yeah, it's a relatively smaller number, a smaller portion of that. There were, as far as active sites, I think there were 55 active sites for large land disturbance permits that were, and the majority of those were in the city. I think the only one in the county was the Sunshine, the shed shop, or
the shed shop on 25.
Yeah, that's it. I passed it on the way up here. So that's a very that requires a lot of effort on their part, and they do a great job of tracking all the statistics for that, and so they get kudos from my perspective. The fifth MCM is post-construction stormwater management, and what this is you all passed an ordinance, I guess it's been about 2 years ago maybe, for your post-construction stormwater ordinance, where any kind of new development implements these what we call best management practices to improve stormwater before it's released from a site. And, the shed shop is an example of that, because you do have a groundwater water supply, you want to recharge that groundwater. And so part of the requirement is to put in like some kind of a BMP that would actually support that. And they actually implemented a BMP on their site plan for that purpose. And so this ordinance actually mandates how those types of improvements are constructed and installed and maintained as guided by your regulations that planning and zoning oversees. And there are annual maintenance and inspection requirements for that. And so that's another part of the oversight process, is to make sure those kinds of activities are taking place. And then the last MCM is pollution prevention and good housekeeping practices for municipal operations. And this is probably one of the most important, because with all of the different facilities that the county operates, and similarly with the city, is that you sort of set the example with your operations for others to follow. And so there's actually an O&M management plan for facilities that you all are a part of, with all of your different operations, from the road garage to this building that we're in here today, and there are a number of them. And that plan defines various facility management responsibilities. There is an annual inspection requirement, and then also training. And to give you a perspective on training, and I give Jared a big kudos as well. He's actually your MS4 coordinator. Jared oversees the program, and I work with Jared. But there were over 67 trainings, 67 trainings this past year with all of your staff, and these included I'm going to just list these just so you know who all's been a part of this. But it was like the road department, Parks and Rec staff, EMA, EMS fire, courthouse, city county museum, animal control, the coroner's office, detention center, and the sheriff's office. So there may have been one or two that I've missed, but it touches a lot of different areas, and all of these folks, have been kind of educated on different things related to stormwater and kind of practices that need to be applied in that, and sort of set the standard that the community is able to follow. So with that, this annual report, just to give you perspective on how much data goes in that, I just sent Jared a copy of it for review, and it's almost 650 pages. So it's
650 pages.
It's a lot of data.
Yeah. He could give an update.
Yeah.
No, we appreciate what you do for us to make sure that we are compliant with this requirement. That's the bottom line.
That's exactly right. And we're not here to try to make more of it, more than what it needs to be, but it's obviously, when you look at what Scott County is, recognized for with Elkhorn Creek and kind of the natural environment, there's a lot of assets here that you want to protect, and it really starts with, how you handle things in the developed areas of the county, where those can adversely affect the things that you all, some take for granted, others appreciate, but when things go bad, everybody recognizes there's a problem. And so this is the proactive part of trying to protect those kinds of assets as part of your all's daily activities. And so as a part of this, one of the things that we've also shared or provided with Jared is that we kind of go from year to year in terms of what we do, and I think there's a couple of amendments that we have at least submitted for your all's consideration. There's 2 task orders, and then also an extension of our agreement. You all have every year there's a 5-year permit term, and this is the last year of the current permit term, and so we will see a new permit come out later this fall for draft for review. And so within that permit, there may be things that it mandates that there's obligations that you have to now start doing for the next 5 years that we will have to help you track.
Do we have any opportunity to when there's really no, this is a mandate, and there's really no opportunity to, when that permit comes out, we have to follow the terms of the permit.
That's correct. That's correct.
Yeah.
And but what we do, and this is one of the things that we have people that we've got one gentleman in particular that he's actually an advocate for our MS4 clientele, and so we actually participate in the review process and provide commentary on, on just some of the things that go into the permit. There's sometimes they propose things and they may not necessarily understand, the implications of that, and we will provide comments back, on whether maybe you should think about this or look at this a different way, to try to basically help shape that permit so that the requirements are meaningful and that you get value out of what we're doing, not just trying to put together a 650-page report that nobody looks at.
So we'll look for that, and then you mentioned our agreement needs to be renewed.
Yeah, and it's an update. There's two task orders and an amendment to our agreement to extend the term, the agreement term.
All right.
So,
Well, we appreciate this update. What questions does anyone have for Mike?
Well, when does that need to be?
You'll get that information to us.
yeah, it's your all's. There's no rush on it from our standpoint. We do whatever we need to do, working with you on that. So.
Yeah, but you'll share with Jared, and
Yeah.
Jared and Stacy will share with the court, and
Okay.
and we'll bring that forward, here in the next few months.
So the current agreement, we're covered until June 30th or something?
Well, actually,
Or,
we've been working under the 2021. We got more mileage out of our last agreement and was able to do almost all of the things that you had to get done in 2022 over budget that we had allocated from 2021. So we try to be judicious in how we spend your money and not do the things that we need to do, and we were able to really get more mileage out of the budget that we had previously, and so we're basically in pretty good shape for this past year, and so we're from that standpoint. So we'll go for 23, and then maybe we'll have the same thing that might happen in 23 that happened in 2022.
Any other questions? Mike, as always, thank you.
Okay, thank you all.
Moving on, ordinance 2303, second reading, advisory board. Before Cam reads that, I have a recommendation to the court. We've shared the 9 members plus the three ex officio members, and I have the 3 of them are ones, 3 of them are 2s, 3 of them are 3s, and I have the names for that rotation just to recommend to you all, and I did it, and it really just me putting my thoughts to it, and I'll share with you all if you want to do that now, or if you just want to let Cam read the ordinance, and then but we have to appoint the board members in a separate motion. So I just wanted you all to know that I do have that ready to share with you.
I put the appointments after.
Okay.
So that
Yeah.
ordinance is approved before we appoint.
Right, and then that's you've got that dead on. So, Cam.
Yes, sir. Scott County Fiscal Court Ordinance Number 23-03, an ordinance establishing a reservoir property advisory board. Whereas Kentucky Revised Statute 67.710 subsection 8 authorizes the county judge executive to, with the approval of the fiscal court, make appointments to or remove members from such boards as the fiscal court may by ordinance create. And whereas Scott County owns a number of parcels in the area of Skinnersburg Road, Gaines Road, Stockdale Road, and Coppage Road, collectively referred to as reservoir property, identified in Exhibit A attached here to and incorporated herein by reference. And whereas the reservoir property, scam call, that's distracting. Whereas the reservoir property is used by a number of citizens and groups for recreational purposes, including but not limited to horseback riding, biking and hiking, all of which enhance the quality of life of the citizens of Scott County and bring economic benefit and tourism to the community. And whereas it is the intent of the Scott County Fiscal Court to preserve and protect the natural environment and the reservoir property. Now therefore be it ordained by the Scott County Fiscal Court as follows. Section 1, the Scott County Reservoir Property Board is hereby established and shall meet a minimum of 4 times annually in a location provided by the court. The board shall be comprised of 12 members, 9 of which shall be volunteer members and 3 of which shall be ex officio members. The ex officio members shall be the Director of Georgetown Scott County Parks and Recreation, the Director of the Scott County Road Department, and the Director of Georgetown Scott County Tourism. The 9 volunteer members shall be appointed by the County Judge Executive with approval of the Fiscal Court, shall have lived in the county for at least 1 year prior to appointment, and shall have demonstrated an interest in horseback riding, biking, hiking, environmental preservation, or a related area. Section 2. The appointment term of each volunteer board member shall be 4 years, except for initial appointment terms. Initial appointment terms shall be as follows. 3 members shall be appointed to a 1-year term, 3 members shall be appointed to 2-year terms, and 3 members shall be appointed to a 3-year term. Section 3, there shall be no compensation for services of board members. Section 4, the Scott County Reservoir Property Board shall have the purpose and power to make non-binding recommendations to the Scott County Fiscal Court regarding the use, management, and maintenance of the reservoir property. The board's role in carrying out this purpose will entail suggesting methods to protect the scenic, biological, ecological, and geological attributes of the reservoir property, to minimize the impacts to the environment, and to maintain a trail system of good quality. Section 5, this ordinance shall take effect upon passage and publication. First reading was approved March 23rd, 2023. Second readings today, April 14th, 2023.
Questions or comments?
And if I missed this, I apologize. I heard the length of the terms, but were there what's the word I'm looking for? Well, they're staggered limits, term limits on that board.
Not contained in this ordinance. We do have another ordinance that prescribes term limits to 2 terms, I believe.
2 terms, okay. So on like the ones that are 1 year and 2 year, if you say 2 terms, then they only get to do 2 years and 4 years, whereas the 3-year people get 6 years, correct? Is there any way to?
4 years plus the 1, 4 years plus the 2, yeah. So they would, the 1-year person would only serve 5 years.
Not 1 and 1.
Well, but if the 1-year person, if you only get 2 terms and the term is staggered and it's 1 year, then they would only serve 2 years.
It's
correct?
Only 1 year, 2 year, and 3 years for the
They
first
serve
year.
5, yes, right. They serve a 1-year term and they can be reappointed.
For
But they could only,
4 year.
for a 4-year term. Okay,
Yeah.
all right, thank you. Okay, I got you now.
Yeah,
I
it took
understand.
me-
Sorry,
No, I
because
had
I'm
to-
thinking,
no,
I'm
I
like,
I'm glad
Yeah.
you asked, so everybody understands.
okay, all right, I understand.
And I think we did that,
Yeah.
I think Cam did that the right way,
Right.
so we don't have everybody going off at once and they're staggered and it's,
So you basically have 3 people that can serve 5 years, 3 people that serve 6 years, 3 people that serve 8 years.
Correct.
could.
If reappointed.
Yeah.
And they might be tired,
They might be,
they might be tired and want to run away.
that 1-year person might be happy.
Yeah. Questions? Motion. Second, Kelly. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Now, we've got general obligation bonds, 2304, first reading next in the,
So initially, I put him so he didn't have to wait,
yeah,
but he's got to wait anyway.
yeah, because it's new business and we
because
can't
we
move it.
added to it, so-
Sorry, RJ.
If you'd like to go out and get everybody some coffee, we'd greatly appreciate it.
RJ, if you want to step up and just, we'll go ahead and knock this obligation bond questions out, and this is an ordinance. It's required by DLG, and this is allowing us to issue debt, and it is a, it's a required piece of this process in our consideration of moving forward with the capital projects of the sheriff's office, clerk's office, EMS station. And, we talked about this for a long time. This is something we have to do. And the figures in there are just recommendations from RJ that serves as a placeholder. It does not hold us to anything. And what comments would you make, and then we'll take questions and then read the ordinance.
Sure. It's a timing issue, right? So we have to have an ordinance in place that specifies an amount of money not to exceed that we have to submit to DLG for their hearing. It's not an obligation, it's simply an approval, but I have to have the ordinance to send to DLG. And we're trying to do this to coincide with when we actually go to bid. So then we'll have a firmer number and we'll know exactly what we want to fund through debt. But this is just kind of the first step that we have to take.
Questions?
So there's a specific amount just for clarification, there's a specific amount that goes in this ordinance.
Yes.
And it's not to exceed. And
not to exceed $15 million.
And then if something happens and we decide to delay, the ordinance is there regardless of it's 2 months from now, 8 months from now. Okay.
Correct. And you have an ability, obviously, to amend your ordinance.
Mm-hmm.
The issue is that I have to have DLG approval, and that process is going to take us about 45 days.
Okay.
So when I petition them for the hearing, then they'll set a date, and we'll have to publish, and then the judge and Michelle and I will have a short call with the staff at DLG. It's very simple to do. It just takes some time.
Yeah. Questions? Other questions? Cam, if you'll, surely you have a summary, I believe.
do have a summary.
I want all 650 pages, Judge.
It was long.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, just the titles half the page. Scott County, Kentucky, ordinance number 23-04. An ordinance of the Fiscal Court of Scott County, Kentucky, or county, authorizing and approving the issuance of Scott County, Kentucky general obligation bonds in a principal amount not to exceed $15 million of bonds for the purpose of financing the acquisition and construction of an emergency medical services county clerk and/or sheriff office facilities, including the acquisition and construction of such other capital improvements for county-owned and operated buildings as may be required, authorizing the levy of a direct annual tax on all taxable property within the county, in addition to all other taxes in an amount sufficient to pay the principal of and interest on the bonds, to the extent that revenues are not sufficient, and authorizing the taxing of all other actions, including the execution and delivery of a continuing disclosure agreement, tax certificate, official statement, and such other documents, agreements, and certificates necessary or required for the issuance of the bonds and the financing of the projects. Summary. 1. Contains a preamble stating that the Scott County Fiscal Court desires to finance the acquisition and construction of emergency medical services, county clerk and/or sheriff's office facilities, and that the county proposes to issue general obligation bonds in a total amount not to exceed $15 million. 2. Contains definition of terms. 3. Contains provisions regarding the necessity for and authorization of the bonds. 4. Contains provisions regarding the form and execution of the bonds, authentication, and optional and mandatory redemption. 5. Contains provisions regarding compliance with the Constitution, designation and certification of public project, authorization of tax, pledge of tax, and pledged receipts, payment of bonds, and designation as general obligation bonds. 6. Contains provisions regarding authorizing the execution of documents, authorized and approval of state local debt officer. 7. Contains provisions regarding employment of financial advisor and bond counsel, advertisement, sale of bonds, and acceptance of bids. 8. Contains provisions regarding establishment of funds. 9. Contains provisions regarding registration of bonds, duties of bond registrar, paying agent, and depository. 6. Contains provisions regarding tax covenants. 11. Contains provisions regarding the contractual nature of the ordinance. 12. Contains provisions regarding qualified tax-exempt obligations designation. 13. Contains provisions regarding disclosure undertaking procedures. 14. Contains provisions regarding severability. 15. Contains provisions repealing conflicting ordinances and states that the ordinance is effective upon passage and publication. The full text of this ordinance is available for examination at the office of the Scott Fiscal Court Clerk, 101 East Main Street, Georgetown, Kentucky, 40324, introduced and publicly read for the first time April 14, 2023.
We'll do a second reading at our next meeting if this is approved. And what questions or comments does anyone have? Would there be a motion? Motion from David, a second from Kelly. Any other questions or comments? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? All those in favor, please say aye. I mean, we'll pass. Sorry. My head's a little off. Thanks. That's checked off. So now we'll go back to Reservoir Property Advisory Board appointments. The names that I have for the ones are Aubrey Roark, Jackie Anders, and Mike Key. The twos would be Kurt Ramsey, Andrew Bagroon, and Ethan Howard. The threes would be Michael Johnson, Roy Cornett, and Temple Jewett. Motion, second from Ryan Pratt. Any other questions or comments? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Now, Resolution 2308, Revenue Commission. Rand has,
All right.
Cam has a summary of
I'll
this.
take it, that's no problem.
And I'll let you read the summary, then we'll take any questions.
Okay, Resolution 2308, Scott County Fiscal Court, a resolution adopting the Georgetown Scott County Revenue Commission Occupational License Tax Regulations. Whereas the Georgetown Scott County Revenue Commission, or GSCRC, which is comprised of 3 commissioners, including the mayor of Georgetown, Scott County Judge Executive, and the superintendent of Scott County Schools, must maintain extensive regulations for the collection of occupational license taxes. And whereas pursuant to Scott County Ordinance 03-10, the GSCRC is authorized to promulgate regulations subject to the approval of the Scott County Fiscal Court. And whereas at its September 28, 2022 meeting, the GSCRC unanimously approved the occupational license tax regulations, a portion of which was amended at the GSCRC's January 25th, 2023 meeting. And these regulations now require the approval of the Scott County Fiscal Court. Now therefore be it resolved by the Scott County Fiscal Court that the Georgetown Scott County Revenue Commission occupational license tax regulations, which are attached hereto and incorporated as though set fully herein, are hereby approved by the Georgetown City. Well, I should say from Scott County Fiscal Court. We'll make that change. And that's it. Approved this day.
All right. Questions, comments, and would there be a motion?
I do have some questions.
All right.
And if you don't know, that's okay. In section 3.7, it talks about like people who work from their home. And I have people that I represent, they might work for Google or they develop software for someplace in California. How does the Revenue Commission go about, under the regulations, it says they have to pay payroll tax, but how do they identify those people? Because I'm sure they're paying payroll tax in California if that's who they work for. And I can just use that as an example.
I would request that you allow me to get a narrative of what their practice is, because they do it. Oh, Michelle wants to add.
Yeah.
That's unusual.
Okay, Mr.
But true.
If a company in any other state has operations in the state of Kentucky in this district, they have to have a business license tax here.
Yeah.
And with that, if there are employees under that, they have, then Google or whomever under that business license tax ID would pay those taxes that way.
So, because I've actually got a call about this.
I get calls about it all the time. They think that I'm
when you have an LLC set up and you're operating in Scott County, it's easy for them to identify that. But for individual employees, and that explains it. The other thing I had was on section 5.2, and it's what is exemptions. And one of the groups that is exempt is precinct workers. Is there any reason why, like, we have people that, it was like...
To encourage to get precinct workers.
So that was the logic behind it. Okay.
But that's not, I don't think that's been changed. That's been there forever.
Okay. I saw that and I was like, this is weird, because it was agricultural people and those types of folks.
Yeah.
But, okay, gotcha.
Would there be a motion to accept? Motion from Mr. Dwayne Ellison, second from Mr. Rick Hostetler. Any other questions or comments? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Resolution 2309, the road aid agreement resolution. Cam, if you could share that with us. Yes, sir.
Resolution 2309, Fiscal Court of Scott County. Resolution adopting and approving the execution of the County Road Aid Co-op Program contract between the Fiscal Court and the Commonwealth of Kentucky Transportation Cabinet, Department of Rural and Municipal Aid for the fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2023, as provided in the Kentucky Revised Statutes, and accepting all roads and streets referred to therein as being a part of the county road system. Be it resolved by the Fiscal Court that the Fiscal Court does hereby accept all roads and streets referred to in said contract as being a part of the county road system, and the Fiscal Court does hereby ratify and adopt all statements, representations, warranties, covenants, and agreements contained in said contract, and does hereby accept said contract, and by such acceptance agrees to all the terms and conditions therein stated, and the county judge executive of the county is hereby authorized and directed to sign said contract as set forth on behalf of the Fiscal Court of Scott County. And the county clerk of Scott County is hereby authorized and directed to certify thereto.
Questions?
My copy does say court clerk, just so you know.
Oh, yeah. That
Okay.
I have to change it every year.
Yeah, you'll be the one certifying.
Rick?
Just basically the same thing we do every year, motion.
Motion. Second, Kelly. Any other questions or comments? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Resolution 2310, TMMK land donation. And this is the 7.2 acres off of Lexus Way that we have navigated, and, you know, very, very thankful for TMMK and their donation. And just to let you know, the plats are at TMMK, hopefully going to be signed today, returned to me. Once they're returned to me, we will get them back to P&Z. Then the deed gets,
Yeah.
Can you help me there?
No, you're right, and I think we're working on, there are two documents that will need to be done, are a donation agreement, which has been drafted, and we reviewed it, we're good with it, and then a deed. I think we're just waiting for the plat to be recorded so we can put that description in both documents.
So that process is moved well along, but we needed this resolution, and I'll ask Cam to read the resolution, and we'll answer any questions, go from there.
Scott Fiscal Court Resolution number 23-10, a resolution of Scott County, Kentucky, or Scott County, authorizing the judge executive to enter into an agreement with Toyota Motor Manufacturing Kentucky, or Toyota, and to execute any documents including a donation agreement and deed which are necessary to receive a donation of land from Toyota located at Lexus Way, Georgetown, Kentucky 40324. Whereas Scott County desires to build a new Georgetown-Scott County Emergency Medical Services, or EMS, facility, and whereas Toyota owns certain real property located at Lexus Way, Georgetown, Kentucky 40324, and whereas Toyota desires to donate a portion of the property to Scott County, which Scott County shall use for public safety purposes, and whereas Scott County has agreed to accept the donation with the intention that Scott County maintain property for public safety services, namely by constructing a new EMS facility on the property. And whereas Toyota intends that the fair market value of the property shall be treated as a charitable contribution by Toyota to Scott County. And whereas Toyota desires to donate the property to Scott County, and Scott County desires to accept the donation of property from Toyota, now therefore be it resolved this 14th day of April 2023 by Scott County, Kentucky. The judge executive is hereby authorized to execute and furnish all required documents as may be required for the purpose of effecting the transfer of the above described property to Scott County from Toyota.
Questions or comments? Would there be a motion?
So moved.
Chad, second. Ryan Pratt. Any other questions or comments? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Resolution 2311, I'm going to let Cam take. It's from Strobo Barkley in regards to their representation in relation to the bluegrass water rate increase. And just, we are going to oppose that rate increase on behalf of the citizens and the businesses that are impacted by this proposal. I'll let Cam read it, and then we'll answer any questions.
Okay. Scott Fiscal Court, Resolution Number 2311. A resolution of the Scott County Fiscal Court or Scott County authorizing the judge executive to enter into a contract for legal services with Strobo Barkley PLLC or Strobo Barkley for the purpose of Strobo Barkley representing Scott County to intervene and represent Scott County's interests before the Kentucky Public Service Commission in case number 22-00432. Whereas Bluegrass Water Utility Operating Company, LLC, or Bluegrass Water, has applied for approval from the Kentucky Public Service Commission to adjust its rates for wastewater service. And whereas the wastewater service rate increase proposed by Bluegrass Water will negatively impact citizens and businesses in northern Scott County. And whereas the Scott County Fiscal Court has voted to authorize the judge executive and county attorney to engage outside counsel to oppose the proposed rate increase. Now therefore be it resolved this 14th day of April 2023 by Scott County, Kentucky. The judge executive is hereby authorized to execute a contract for legal services and documents which may be required for the purpose of hiring Strobo Barkley to represent Scott County's interests before the Kentucky Public Service Commission in case number 2022-00432.
Questions or comments?
I have a question. Is
Yes,
Bluegrass
sir.
Water, by any chance, giving any information to anybody why they're increasing so much?
Yeah, in there, it's for infrastructure improvements, but they're not real specific.
And Kelly, that might not be for the areas that are in Scott County. That could be for other areas that they own in other counties.
Now, they filed originally, but then it was, Cam, can you help me?
Well, yeah, I guess there was basically some kind of technical
With the
deficiency
PSC.
in their pleadings, and so they have moved, basically they're going to be able to move forward, but we're waiting on an order from the Public Service Commission, which will then set like a deadline for people to file motions to intervene. So, this was discussed in fiscal court. Joe Pat and we reached out to Fitz. Fitz recommended these lawyers. And they are, working on it as, they're already kind of working on a motion to intervene. They're ready to file it, I think, but just, they wanted a resolution and a contract to hire them first, which I understand. So I was like, hey, we'll do it Friday morning and go from there.
No, I understand that. I think it's great. I'm glad we're doing it. It's just such a drastic increase. I just don't know why they haven't given specific information.
Yeah.
Well, if we decide to approve this, so they can begin to feed us information back as they get into the process, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think my understanding of what will happen is they will file a motion on the county's behalf to intervene in the case. Now, it's, I guess, not a guarantee that will be granted. I guess that's up to the commission, but, they'll make their arguments and go from there. But yeah, assuming they are granted permission to intervene, we should get a lot more information.
There's like a time, there's a short window
Yeah.
that they can file that motion once the clock starts ticking.
I don't think the clock is currently ticking.
We don't
but
think
they are wanting to move, go ahead.
And they're watching it, and they haven't notified us that the clock started ticking yet. But just to remind everybody, if we're talking about Moon Lake and Riften Meadows, we're going from $12.50 to $99 a month. And then you talk about the Tri-Port Road businesses, and they're talking about thousands of dollars additional a month
increase
that increases their fee. So that is why I think we should aggressively work to oppose this.
I agree, and it goes to Chad's point. We don't really know, and I'm assuming hopefully we'll get granted intervention status, and then we can find out the details. But like Chad said, we really don't know that they're going to take this increase and do anything to the Scott County facilities that they own.
There's no-
And maybe they will. We
Yeah.
don't really know, so.
Because their parent company's out of like Texas, right? Like they're owned out of
Missouri.
Texas.
Missouri.
Yeah. Motion.
I didn't know there was
That's what you
bluegrass
need.
in Missouri either. I looked that up
Can I
too.
ask a quick question?
We have a motion, but second, but we have a question.
What, do they have any notice, NOVs, any violations that we're aware of that, what they do?
Well, we can tell you that, from my understanding, that there has been issues related to infiltration, is that the correct term? In Longview, and it's been documented with the Division of Water.
Well, and that's something, is that something we've already did, we can request that information from the state, right? I mean,
Yeah.
We can do an open records request.
And I think Strobo Barkley will probably, could we ask Strobo Barkley to do that?
Yeah.
Yeah, so.
Yeah.
So is there a motion down here?
Yes.
Is there a second? And we have a second. Any other questions or comments? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you all on that. EMS new hire, Jeff and Chris.
Yes, Judge Magistrates, thank you. I have looks like the next couple agenda items. First of all, on behalf of Chris Runyon, pleased to recommend the appointment of Hannah Klein as a paramedic. That'll be effective May 1st at $15.78 an hour. She has 5 years experience and also has been working with the Boyle County EMS program. So that's the first recommendation for you.
That's a win, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
What's that do
Questions,
for
comments?
staffing?
It gets us just one short.
Motion.
Second.
Second, Mr. Jones. Any other questions? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Fire Department.
Yeah, this is the two new hires, 2 part-time staff members in the fire department, John Rossi and Wes Harold. They'll start on or after April 17th at $10.93 an hour. Both are retired firefighters and have extensive backgrounds in firefighting.
Questions? Motion for Mr. Corman, second for Mr. Livingston. Any other questions? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes.
Okay, the next one is the hiring list, and just pleased to recommend to you the hiring list of 19 individuals on that list, and we are also going to be recommending that we hire 4 from this list. As you can recall from the last meeting, we definitely have 3 vacancies right now. We have another anticipated vacancy that'll be effective August the 1st. So we want to move forward hiring all 4 individuals at this time. So I'm recommending to you the hiring list, and then also the hiring of Bracken Napier, Zachary Hunt, Corey Hallam, and John Ballinger. They'll all start on May 1st, and all 4 will start at the same pay rate, $12.80 an hour.
Questions?
And I'll ask you again, that doesn't cause any issues with what we have with regards to number of personnel listed out for the fire department?
I don't think any in our admin code that it would prohibit us from doing what we're doing. And I think it's just being smart.
I agree.
Well, I got a motion. I was going to ask you, is that a motion? Is there a second? Second for Mr. Jones. Any other questions or comments? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes.
And then the last item I have is the road department new hire. I only have one. We thought we would have a mechanic to recommend, but unfortunately we aren't going to be able to recommend him for appointment. He turned us down, unfortunately, so that's where that one stands. But I am pleased to recommend the appointment of David Cannon as an equipment operator at $22.05 an hour, and he'll be effective Monday, May the 8th. David has his commercial driver's license and also has 20 years of related work experience, so coming to us with a lot of experience.
David's an excellent guy.
Motion?
Yes, sir.
Second for Mr. Hostetler. Any other questions or comments? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes.
All right, thank you.
Back to the mechanic. Did the mechanic give us any feedback why he reconsidered?
Possibly compensation. Just, we were, just
How
off a
many,
little bit.
how many applicants did we have a pool
Not
from?
many, just 4.
Is that something that we need to help JR and the department with and look a little deeper on, maybe?
It might be helpful in this case, yes.
I know it's a competitive field on the mechanic side of things, just like, so I know it's important because you got a lot of vehicles coming through there and keeps the sheriff's office, EMS, everybody going and yada, yada, yada.
Okay.
So is that something we could maybe
Yeah,
put
we
a
can
pencil
work
to?
on, yes.
We'll add to the list.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you all for the work you do. Much appreciated. And then going to go to new business. The first item on new business is the consideration of what I sent you yesterday, Administrative Office of the Court's bond anticipation note renewal. And what I shared in the email yesterday, it's pretty as simple as that. The resolutions related to the Justice Center project, we issued these bond anticipation notes 2 years ago. Usually that would be enough time to issue the permanent debt. However, we are not at that point. This resolution simply renews the notes until the permanent debt is issued. The goal is to go to bid in October. Then I'll let RJ take it from there.
This just covers the interim cost until we issue the permanent debt. When we go to bid in October, hopefully, we have an ability to fund the project in full. We just simply won't know until we get to that point.
Now, we had a Justice Center Project Development Board meeting yesterday. AOC representatives were here. Trace Creek were here. They have looked very closely at the estimated costs. They've looked at all the fees and other expenses, and I made the point to ask them. RJ's smiling. Usually, it's just a 20-year term. If we could expand out to 25, there'd be no question, right?
Shouldn't be.
Yeah, but they would prefer to keep it at 20. If we could squeak through at 20 with the funds that have been allocated, it's very close. So they're still putting their pencil to the paper there, but they are optimistic. They pretty much said that AOC has the ability internally to make that decision to go to 25 if we need to. And they've done that on other projects. The precedent is set. They've done that at Oldham County. So just to let you know that I feel comfortable that we are not in some funding shortfall crisis with the project. The demo is going to be tied up pretty much. They're going to straw and seed down here, and it'll sit behind those fence until we get all the construction documents and all that done, and hopefully be able to go to bid in October. But it takes a long time to get all that done. Questions, comments?
I do have, that bonding of that project does not affect our bonding ability or capacity, is that correct?
That's correct. It is a lease with AOC, so it's not the general obligation of the county.
Would there be a reading of the summary?
Sorry, the summary's fairly lengthy too. Scott County Fiscal Court, Resolution Number 2312. A resolution of the Scott County, Kentucky, directing the Scott County Public Projects Corporation to take certain actions as the agency, instrumentality, and constituted authority of the County of Scott, Kentucky. Specifically authorizing, approving, and directing the issuance of Scott County Public Projects Corporation First Mortgage Revenue Bonds, Judicial Center Project, in an approximate principal amount of $50 million for the purpose of financing the costs of the acquisition, construction, installation, and equipping of new courthouse facilities in the county. Specifically authorizing, approving, and directing the issuance of one or more series of Scott County Public Projects Corporation First Mortgage Revenue Bond Anticipation Notes, Judicial Center Project, relating to the bonds, authorizing the advertisement for bids for the bonds and the notes, and the distribution of a preliminary official statement for the purchase of the bonds, and authorizing other actions in connection therewith. Summary. 1. Authorizes the Scott County Public Projects Corporation, acting on the authority of the Scott County Fiscal Court, or Scott County, to take such actions as may be necessary for the formal authorization by the corporation of the issuance of approximately $50 million principal amount of Scott County Public Project Corporation First Mortgage Revenue Bonds Judicial Center Project in one or more note series of the bonds for the purposes of A, refunding previously issued series of notes, B, financing additional costs of the acquisition, construction, installation, and equipping of new courthouse facilities to be located in Scott County project, C, paying the costs of issuance of the bonds, and D, funding any required debt service. 2. Authorizes the corporation to take such actions as may be necessary for the issuance of Scott County Public Projects Corporation First Mortgage Revenue Bond Anticipation Notes Judicial Center Project in a principal amount not to exceed the principal amount of the bonds authorized or the notes, the proceeds of which notes shall be applied for the purposes of 1. Providing interim financing for the project, 2. Funding capitalized interest, 3. Paying the costs of issuance of such notes, and 4. Refunding, if necessary, any previously issued series of notes. 3. Authorizes the corporation to take all actions as may be necessary for the issuance of Scott County Public Projects Corporation First Mortgage Revenue Bond Anticipation Notes Judicial Center Project, Series 2023, and an approximate principal amount of $7.5 million in Series 2023 notes for the purposes of A, refunding the outstanding Scott County Public Projects Corporation Revenue Bond Anticipation Notes, Series 2021, dated June 10th, 2021, in advance of maturity. B, providing interim financing for additional costs of the project in anticipation of the issuance of the bonds. And C, paying the cost of issuance of the Series 2023 notes. 4, authorizes the issuance, sale, and delivery by the corporation of the bonds and the notes and the application of the proceeds of the bonds and notes to the purposes set forth in the resolution. 5, acknowledges that the bonds and the notes are to be issued by the corporation for the purpose of providing funds for the financing of the project. 6, ratifies and affirms the memorandum of understanding by and among the county, AOC, and the corporation. 7, ratifies and affirms the contract, lease agreement, and option by and among the county, AOC, and the corporation for the lease. 8, approves, authorizes, and directs the execution and delivery by the corporation of a certain mortgage deed of trust, the mortgage, in the usual and customary form. 9, states that in connection with the project, the county may secure or has secured fee simple title to the real estate, which is the site where the project is to be located and which may be pledged under the mortgage as security for payment of the principal of and interest on the bonds and the notes. 10, authorizes the corporation to act on behalf of the county, including in analyzing and comparing bids and proposals. 11, agrees that the county will execute, comply with, and carry out all the provisions of the continuing disclosure agreement in connection with the issuance of the bonds. 12, sets out the procedure for opening and acting upon bids submitted for the purchase of the bonds and proposals submitted for the purchase of the notes. 13, states that the president of the corporation shall, in accepting the successful bid for the bonds or proposal for the purchase of the notes, determine the exact rate or rates of interest which such bonds or notes shall bear. 14, states the process to be followed if no bids or proposals shall be accepted for the purchase of the bonds or the notes. 15, authorizes the corporation to continue to take all necessary, desirable, or appropriate actions to effect such financing as authorized in the resolution. 16, designates Compass Municipal Advisors, LLC, Lexington, Kentucky, as the financial advisor, and Dinsmore and Scholl, LLP, Louisville, Kentucky, as bond counsel for the bonds and the notes. 17, states that if any section, paragraph, clause, or provision of the resolution shall be held to be invalid, the invalidity of such section, paragraph, clause, or provision shall not affect any of the remaining provisions. 18, repeals all conflicting ordinances, resolutions, orders, or parts thereof. 19, takes effect upon adoption. The full text of this resolution is available for examination in the office of Scott Fiscal Court Clerk, 101 East Main Street, Georgetown, Kentucky, 40324.
Shoo.
But I promise that the full thing would have been.
Oh, yeah. You know, that it takes care of keeping things moving in the right direction, and it's something that needs to be done. Questions or,
After you vote on this, I have a comment.
all right. Would there be any questions, or is a motion from Mr. Pratt, second from Mr. Hostetler? Any other questions? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes.
Okay, so last week I had to renew the PPC registration with the Secretary of State, and it was me, you, Michelle.
And Alvin Lyons.
David, Jared, and Alvin. I replaced Alvin with Rick. And this,
Any money involved?
this board has to approve this exact resolution.
At our next
So
meeting.
It's at 6:55 on the 27th, if we could vote
Yes.
on that and then start the meeting.
Ye-
And will you do a summary for that one also, please?
Just appointing them, is that what
It's the exact same except
Oh,
for
yeah,
different
yeah,
signature
yeah.
lines.
Yes, I can do that.
Okay.
Does he need to be, does Alvin need to be officially removed?
He is.
Okay,
That's already
Yeah.
happened.
okay.
So you appreciate all you do,
You're good.
and we'll do this, for the Public Properties Corporation at that next meeting.
That's the last thing.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I want to talk about the ambulance that we have shared information about and would like to request, it's my recommendation that we approve that request from EMS. I've spoken to the city. The city had no objections and thought that that was wise as well, and that they would make accommodations in next year's budget like what we have mentioned doing. We are just simply taking the $150,000 that we had allocated for the purchase of a new chassis. Can't get the chassis, so we're taking the money and putting that $150,000 down now. After July 1, we'll have to allocate money in the budget for the balance. The total expense is $284,000 and some short change there, but we'll allocate the balance into that budget for next year.
Total was 285.
Was it 285?
894.
894. Thanks for being
So the
specific.
150,000's already been approved, so.
The 150,000.
To reallocate it.
Is that 285?
It's
Is that our
already
half?
in EMS's budget.
There's 150,000 in this year's budget that was to purchase a new chassis to put a old box on. We can't get the new chassis, so they would accept 150,000 now, and then the balance after July 1, and the balance, whatever that would be. Rick, would you read that again?
Well, the total was 285, 894. Minus the 150.
Right. And this is an interlocal agreement. Half is paid by the city, half is paid by, we will bill the city for their half.
So the total cost of the ambulance is 285.
Total cost is 285.
Okay, yeah, that was my question.
Did we ever get an adjustment on the one that was racked up in Lexington? Because I know they were talking about the box and the equipment.
Right, so we're still waiting for that to be certified. All the equipment that was inside the truck has to be recertified by the manufacturer that none of it was damaged and doesn't need any kind of repairs. So until we get that certification from them, we can't submit.
But I want to ask too, JR had helped with 2 transmissions, kind of getting that. Are those back on the road, the 2 transmissions?
They are.
The two were back on the road, so
they are.
Teamwork makes the dream work.
So how many ambulances do we we run 6, how many do we currently have
We have 9
that are working?
that are working.
Loosely, like they're functioning.
We have 8 that are working. The one that was in the wreck is still out of service.
But we have 2 backups right now,
We have
today.
2 backups, but they are very aged, high mileage. Yeah.
What's the time frame on if we're going ahead and order this one?
So this is coming off the line as a demo truck, which they take around to shows, but it hasn't been to any demos, so it's brand new. They said we can take delivery on it in May. The only question now that we're kind of paying $150 now and the balance in July, we may have to wait till July till it's paid in full to take delivery. They haven't given us an answer on that.
Okay. And I was hopeful that they'd go on and send it.
And they may.
Yeah.
They may. They haven't said no.
Yeah. Tell them we really want it.
Really need it.
Because you're going to send, do you send it to L&W to get the, and then it go on the road?
Yeah.
And we'll cross our fingers that Ford's done a better job with the five. It's a 550, isn't it?
It is
Yeah.
550, yeah.
Any questions or comments? Would there be a motion?
Well, is there like a warranty program like you would on a private passenger vehicle?
Yeah, there's a warranty. I'm not exactly sure what it is, but, 5-year, 3-year, whatever.
Yeah. Motion from Mr. Livingston, second from Mr. Jones. Any other questions or comments? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you. Thank you.
We're glad to check that off the box. And now John Ward's going to come up. We've been awarded a grant for the exhaust systems at the stations, and John wants to request permission to put that work out to bid. Questions or comments?
What was the grant?
For the exhaust system that we talked about, it gets all the exhaust out of the bays.
It was through the Assistance of Firefighters grant that we were awarded.
Do you have the bid language for an advertisement?
I've got the specs. I just got to get with you to get that, whatever we need to include for the paper.
And John's just asking for authorization to do that. So we have a motion and a second from Mr. Hosteller. Any other questions? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you all.
Next thing, we do have one request for a jail hand check, Unified Tech, in the amount of $3,873. This was submitted yesterday. Stacy, is that what you said?
The maintenance manager at the jail, Richard, called and asked if we could please add it because it slipped through the cracks and was actually due like 3 weeks ago.
All right. Motion second from Mr. Jones. Any other questions or comments? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Next, Ryan Pratt brought this to the table, and I'll let Ryan discuss the concern, and Chris is going to assist as well. But AEDs at some park facilities, and I'll be honest with you, I have not been able to communicate with Kim Rice about this, but Ryan has. Is that correct, Ryan? No.
Right.
Okay, I'll turn this over to you.
Yeah, I got called this week by a volunteer at the Scott County Youth Baseball, and they had initially reached out and gotten approved through the hospital for a donation of an AED at Cephaletta Park. Parks came back to them and said, hey, we're going to buy some and get them approved and put them out there, which I think is a great idea. I'm kind of upset as a nurse. I've been volunteering for a long time that I haven't thought about this. I mean, AEDs save lives, we know that. But there's none at these facilities where we have thousands of people throughout the week and on weekends. So I started to make some calls, called Joe Pat, I called some people on the Parks Board, and we found out that there's no AED at Cephaletta, Lyle Road, Great Crossings Park, or Marshall Park. So going back and forth between Parks and Joe Pat, we landed on it'd probably be a better idea if we purchased them through EMS, because then ProCare could help with the maintenance. We could get them approved and out there. I don't know the exact amount. Talking with Joe Pat, we at least need one at every park. Ideally, Lyle Road and Marshall Park would have two, because you have football and softball. The issue that I know of, at least at Lyle Road, is that they have to be in conditioned space. You can't have these AEDs in unconditioned space because the batteries go bad and the pads will go bad if they get too hot or too cold.
Let me ask you a question. Go for it. The only time that space is conditioned is when it's being used.
Which space?
Any space at any of the parks. Cephaletta, Marshall, Great Crossing.
Cephaletta, I talked to the baseball. They said it's 24/7. Their red building is.
Who's paying the utilities on that?
The youth baseball.
Yeah.
Okay.
But
Marshall, Great Crossing, I don't think all those are.
well, Tim keeps that.
Okay, Marshall is not.
Yeah, Tim keeps Great Crossing.
And so we would have to look at,
Have to look at conditioning.
Lyle Road, you would have to run that.
Lyle Road will be,
24/7.
Lyle Road is working right now, for a
Do
minute.
we run it 24/7 now?
Well, we've got
Additional
it,
space?
like when we shut down at Christmas in the future, we'll probably just need to pull them out
'Cause like
during
even-
off-season.
Even at the schools, in the concession stands and in the press box, there is no air running.
And what I wanted to do today was bring this issue up. Chris is checking with Stryker to get prices and make sure it's under our umbrella for maintenance. But we need to talk. It's no sense to like at Lyle Road, in the back there. When they're having games at those new fields, in that just having it in that concession stand, that would do perfect. But somebody, when they're having games up front, a coach or some responsible person has to, in my opinion, take it out and put it, and then take it back. So we need to coordinate that. But like at Great Crossing, in my opinion, I guess Marshall up there.
Probably football and softball side.
Yeah,
Also, animal control wants one.
Animal control needs one.
Let me ask you this, though. So how do you solve the problem of those concession stands, those buildings are not always open? So you may have 20 kids, 15 kids practicing with adults and parents and all that out there on every field, say at Marshall, but the concession stand's not open. Or they may be at Great Crossing playing on a Monday, Tuesday night, and the building may not be unlocked.
In my opinion,
overcome that issue?
at Great Crossing, I think you could put an external mount. I think. Now, Chris, you tell me if that's going to hurt the machine, if it's under shade.
Right, so they do make an outdoor box for those. We currently have several AEDs throughout the community, City Hall, here, library. We have someone that goes out and inspects those regularly. So if we could coordinate with somebody and maybe get a key to that concession that one person at our facility would be responsible for, we could just
I'm not concerned about
add that
inspection.
to.
What I'm concerned about is it's all fine and feel good to have them, but if they
Right.
can't access them when they're being practicing,
Well,
then
like at Great Crossing, like we could put a mount on the concession stand that's under the cover, and I think it'd be okay.
They
These
do,
others,
they do make an outdoor box. It just has to have electricity, right? And that will maintain the temperature. They're more like the standard box is $175. I don't know what the outdoor
Yeah.
box costs.
Well, and we've asked Andrea to quote those boxes because they have to have alarms on them. So if it's tampered with or if it is accessed, we need to know that immediately. So it would call into
does it
911.
let you know, does it? So it's
Yeah,
like
so if
Wi-Fi or
somebody,
something to let you
if
know.
it was vandalized, then yeah, it would alert 911 center and they would
But that
let
might
us
be
know.
a
I
better.
didn't know if there were like coded boxes, so you could provide the code to coaches,
Right.
that they could input the code.
It's
You want
typically
anybody
the breakaway
to be able to
plastic.
access it.
Yeah, just,
But that might solve a lot of the issues because then you don't have to worry about people having keys. You don't have to worry about any of that because they're outside. It can be accessed 24/7.
Yeah.
Who's gonna operate these?
So AEDs are designed to be operated by the layperson. They're hang on the wall of the mall.
I'd be scared to death.
They tell you, they tell you. what
You
to
turn,
do.
hey, you turn it on. You turn it on. and
Stacy and I witnessed it.
You turn it on and it walks you through. They are designed that way.
I'd be scared to death to operate it.
It's loud and it tells you stuff.
Yes, it yells at you.
Okay.
Just think through Marshall Park, we have a fire department right there.
Yeah, Marshall, I
I'm
agree.
just trying to think, do we need to have one with the fire department
I mean,
right
if
there?
they're gone,
Yeah, I get it.
That's true.
I mean, I'm just thinking through it a little
I'm more
bit.
concerned about theft than I am
Sure.
the box
It's the
being.
first thing
Right.
I said.
and we can, air tag them, whatever we need to do, keep track of somebody where, and if that becomes a problem, or if they start being vandalized or stolen, then we'll have to
But I would,
come up with a.
the Suffaletta is going to be inside that red barn. Lyle Road, new concession stand, Great Crossing. There's three right there that, in my mind, we could go on an order and get in process. And then these others, we could work with parks and then coaching and try to have a protocol or such. So I'd like to.
No, I think it's a great idea. I
Right.
just want that part to be thought through of how do you
Sure.
have access to it? How do you keep it as much as possible from being vandalized or stolen?
Right. The outdoor box is locked, and it's the face of it's the breakaway plastic, kind of like a fire extinguisher you'd see.
They're not cheap.
No.
No.
But you can air tag them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I definitely think we should approve ordering at least 3 and then try to talk with Parks about a protocol for the others that Ryan's brought up.
I'd like to ask every department if they have one, and if they don't, can I add to that list?
Yes, I agree. And we need to, since Animal Control said they don't have one.
Right, they want,
that
they
would be
requested
4.
one.
Yeah, so you'll call her on, and then, we'll, you know, I don't know if we really need to approve the purchase. It's under, so we'll report back. We're going to try to order 4 and then report back.
Okay. And I'll just go ahead and bring this up while I'm up here and we're talking about it. We're hosting our annual EMS conference yesterday and today, so Stryker is there on site. Andrea approached me yesterday and said she had been contacted by DT Wells about replacing the 41 AEDs in the Board of Education. And and she asked him, or he asked her if there was some way that they could enter into an MOA with the court to get included in this ALS 360 package. And I didn't have an answer. I don't know. That's a big ask, and I'm sure they would pay for theirs, but I don't know.
But they would pay for theirs.
Oh yeah, but
Maybe we could buy them and then work out a deal with this.
yeah, they have.
I'll
41.
reach out to DT.
Okay.
And
yeah, and the issue they have, I guess, throughout the years, they've bought different brands. The thing about the ones we're purchasing is you apply the pads. When we get there, we unplug the pads from the AD and plug them right into our monitor. Theirs are not compatible.
What would make more sense for our community is if we had one brand.
One brand.
And then when you had people getting training,
yes,
then there was familiarity and consistency.
I can just bill them like I do with salt or anything
Sure.
else.
Whatever. However,
Well, I'll reach out to DT, and thank you for bringing
Thank
that
you.
up.
Yeah. Anything else?
With that said, then I don't have any other business, and I would open the court up to comments or questions from the court for new business.
Just one, maybe a question or partly a comment. I saw where the judge has ruled on that $100 million lawsuit.
100 million.
Yeah. But they have time. They had a 30-day window to appeal.
Yeah.
Have you heard anything, Cam, by chance?
I don't think I've heard anything
About
more
the,
than probably
about
you
the
got
appeal.
on that.
But very thankful for that being dropped. Very thankful for the work of Fitz, Barry, and the rest of the team. That was good news. I think that's about 2 weeks ago now.
Yep. Clock's ticking, and we'll wait till that 30 days goes out, and then we'll go from there. But no, it's fantastic news, and to think of where we were to where we are today, and having that navigated is kudos to the court and our legal team. And
another little update with that, the landfill is still under the closure process, and we still get a few complaints with odor, but I think that comes with closing it. Apparently they have to work on some of the gas wells, some upgrades, and so we still actually recently have had some complaints, but it's unfortunate, but I think that's just part of the closure according to the state, because they're monitoring it pretty heavily from what I can understand when I see the emails and stuff. So that's another good thing. And then one other thing, we did get to go, 3 of us I think were at the ribbon cutting for the Isaiah House. That was a great presentation, and those folks they've hit the ground running, and there's some opportunities to help some of the folks in our community that are struggling with this opioid use disorder. So, but it was a good presentation, pretty good little turnout, And they gave us a tour, anybody that wanted to, and told us what they do, and it's pretty intensive, what they're going to be trying to help folks with.
Any other comments, questions? Anyone from our,
Just
David?
April is National County Month, so weren't sure if you all were aware of that.
Was not aware of that.
What does that mean?
Well, I mean, typically what I'll do during National County Month is I'll go to the elementary schools in my district to like the 3rd or 4th grades and just talk about what we do. The judge has been with me, Chad's been with me, because we kind of share a couple elementary schools, and we go and just talk about.
Those books?
Yes. Yes.
I would like to share those with my kids for training school.
Mm-hmm.
Where
does he go to school? Where?
Eastern.
Eastern? Okay. Who has Eastern?
Kelly.
Kelly?
No.
I can deliver on he doesn't
Okay. Well, but I was just going to say,
I have is years old.
so for 3rd grade, find out how many 3rd graders they have and let me know and I'll pick them up. I'll be at Keiko next week and I can pick them up.
Any other new business, and then any new business or public comment? All right.
Judge, I'd like to adjourn our meeting today in memory of Jackie Covington, a dedicated servant to our county, longtime director of the Scott County Road Department, as well as Scott County Clerk, and we just appreciate Jackie, and we're thanking and praying for the Covington family, and just want to adjourn in his memory today.
Thank you. We got a motion and a second. Any other questions or comments? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion. Thanks, Chad.
Hi, David.
Why, as the secretary, commission.
Hey, David.
I just wanted to come by and say,
No.
that's your deposit.